Good morning, everyone. Today is the Town Council regular meeting, Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 8 a.m. in the Town Hall Rose Room. Can we all stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2, visitors. Are there any visitors that would like to be recognized? Big crowd today, so nobody wants to jump in. Okay. Big crowd, 8 a.m. All right, number 3, approval of the minutes from the August 17th, 2022 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that one.
In a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Appointments and reappointments. So we have an appointment, Gary Bard, Democrat to the Human Service Advisory Board until 6/30/2023. Do we have a motion to approve?
Jerry Beard.
Oh, sorry, Jerry. Motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And Abby Rapcore to the Human Rights Committee till 7/1/2023. Motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
And it's Rocca Piore, that's the only Italian word.
Okay. Number 5 is referral to Planning and Zoning, Section 8-22. This is the discussion we had at our last meeting in reference to the sale of that parcel of land that we discussed at our last meeting. So we look for a motion pursuant to Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The Town Council hereby refers to the Planning and Zoning Commission the possible sale of 36R Killingworth Turnpike, a parcel of .41 acres, for a report back to the Town Council. Your motion to approve?
So moved.
A second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Chairman's report. I do have correspondence that Eric Bergman had sent to us that we want read at our meeting, which is basically just bringing everybody up to date on sustainability, so I will read this into the record. Mr. Chairman, Town Council members, and Manager Kilduff. On behalf of the Sustainability Committee, we would like to provide an update regarding our recent activities and application status. We are happy to announce our application for bronze certification was submitted on Tuesday, August 23rd. We believe that this is the first that an application from this group has been formally submitted for approval, and for that we are quite pleased. We believe that this application is comprehensive and are hopeful for approval, which we believe will be announced in early November. The Sustainability Committee, while advisory in nature, wishes to acknowledge that the town of Clinton, based on a number of metrics, is doing quite well, yet we recommend continued momentum by establishing better communications among advocacy groups, boards and commissions, town departments, state agencies, faith organizations, the town council, and our town manager, so as not to create an unnecessary redundancy overall, which will help better serve the citizens of this town. We also need to thank our department heads, local organizations such as Family Helping Families and others, our consultant town planner and land use office, town manager Carl Kilduff, the BOE, and the CPS, as well as the support system for sustainability CT. We will provide a more detailed update once our application is either approved or denied in November. Thank you for appointing us to this endeavor and giving us a specific charge. Eric Bergman, Clinton's Sustainability Committee Chairman. So we are now brought up to date on sustainability. So, and again, we'll continue to do as he's requested and keep everybody up to date on that. That is it for me. We'll move on to the town manager's report.
You have my written report, so I've been focusing on putting together a financial forecast. Last time we did it was in September, which was before the Board of Ed set its wheels in motion. So if that's your desire again, we would be looking for dates for a workshop to go over where the town's budget could be evolving over the next 5 years. Time before we did, very first time we did it was in November, so the Board of Ed had kind of already started its budget train at that point in time. So earlier would be better if we're trying to get some input on where the Board of Ed should be headed. I've already had some initial conversations with the superintendent, so we are putting together a document for the council's review. The lighting complaint that came forward to the town council, had CCM do some research. There are no comparable ordinances. There are zoning regulations in places in other communities which are more specific than Clinton's. Zoning commissions in those various communities are very specific to light shielding, light angling. So there's far more detail in how other zoning regulations are written. So you're looking for some direction from the council as to how you want to proceed with that, since it really isn't an ordinance per se, it's more a zoning regulation, and it would require an amendment of the existing regulations the town has. The landfill project is moving forward. Initial documentation was sent off to DEEP for their review for the soil acceptability plan and getting our permits in place for capping the landfill. It's anticipated that that should come out of DEEP's permitting process by the end of the calendar year, although it might slip a little. And that would put us in position for spring work to cap the landfill. The Housing Authority feasibility study is in process. You will recall we put money in our ARPA allocation to support pre-application and feasibility work that would support an expansion of the Housing Authority's property. So I've been working with Arthur Isaacson to get that ball moving. We have initial consultants selected, and they will begin their work for assessing the possibility of expanding the facility and what sorts of competitive funding rounds they could proceed trying to get access to in order to actually build new units out on the Housing Authority's property. And that's it.
On the Housing Authority, just for clarity, you said you are helping, or they are actually getting the professionals? Is it falling under the town umbrella, or is it falling under the authority's umbrella?
It's under the town's umbrella. Although they could operate in that fashion, it seemed to be more efficient to run it under the town's umbrella because we're holding the money. It's easier for us to account for it than them to account for it.
Might want to just remind them, there's been some lack of clarity about the authorities providing minutes to the town clerk. I don't know whether or not they necessarily have to with the structure that they're in, so I don't know if we're going to be continue to engage with them that way, whether or not their meeting minutes should be available to the public or not.
All right, it's a totally separate and distinct issue, but
Totally separate, but it's just something that, again, if we're going to be partnering with them, just some clarity for the public if they're looking for, because I went online to look up information and I didn't see any minutes, unless they're just not under where they're supposed to be. And then I just had a question on the light complaint. So are you looking for us to make a motion to send a formal letter to the Planning and Zoning Commission with our recommendation?
well, I believe the individual who spoke had coordinated through your office in Hartford, and sort of the next step would be a zoning regulation is sort of the vehicle that it should take under. There isn't really an ordinance where a town passes an ordinance saying this is how lights are. It's a zoning regulation, and I think you alluded to that in one of the emails to them. So if that's where the council wants to go to respond to that complaint, you should be routing it over to P&Z for P&Z to have more robust regulation than one sentence.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Well, we're going to make a referral to planning and zoning to look for, so there's not going to be an ordinance for that lighting issue that the gentleman came forth. So Carl had done the research, and it's something that's handled in regulations. So giving a referral to planning and zoning so that they can look into a regulation change or regulation, update as it relates to that. So that's basically what it'll be.
Sounds good.
Would there be any guidance towards what we're looking for in that recommendation to them? Because what you mentioned about how they have, other states, other towns have angles and
Yep.
time, would that be in that recommendation to them, that information?
Yeah, we received a couple of draft regulations. I think Tollins is perhaps the most detailed, where there's very specific definitions. They've gone to the lengths of putting together graphics to show applicants how they should be positioning their lights. So that might be the more a preferable model where it's very specific, it's very detailed, you're not left to interpretation. It is what it is, and it is what it isn't.
So that information would go along with our request to planning. Good, great.
Kathy has them also.
Anybody else?
Did you want us to schedule a workshop since it's September and you wanted that financial
Right.
forecast workshop?
Financial forecasting is more for your benefit.
That's,
So, you know, if you want to have it in September, we can pull for dates in September.
And
No, wait, let's do one thing at a time. So that's not the motion that's on the table.
Okay, I'm
right?
sorry,
Yeah, so
I'm
let's do
sorry.
that first.
Okay, I'll go
So
next.
is anybody else with that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so now budget, like
Sorry.
workshops, is that what you're asking about?
yeah, just asking
Yep.
if this is the month that we should schedule it?
I think last year we did October.
It was end of September last year, and the one time before that was in November.
Okay. So yes.
So this would be our opportunity to discuss what we'd like to see, how we'd like to see the budget wind up. I mean, last year, we wound up with a percentage that we wanted to see the budget stay within, you know, an increase to the budget. Would that be this discussion at the end of September?
Yes, so I would do what I've done for you in the past, which is
Right.
kind of general trends. This is
Yes.
the direction we're going. This might be some headwinds or tailwinds to deal with, and then
At the
project out where we would be going, and then looking for financial direction from the council. I think schools would also be looking for some financial direction.
So the sooner the better.
Yes.
Before the Board of Ed starts its budget process,
Right.
it's always
Right.
better.
Well, we have a calendar.
Did you say there was a date for the Board of Ed yet, or they've not set a date?
There's no dates.
There is no date set for the Board of Ed. September is before they start their process.
Well, next Wednesday is the 14th, the Wednesday after that is the 28th. Anybody?
We'll get it, Mary will send out an email. Just to make sure that we get an email out to
Whatever
everybody.
works.
Confirm the date.
Yep,
Okay.
sooner the better.
Anybody else?
Another question?
Yeah.
It's time for another. Carl, I understand that the infrastructure money isn't coming down like the COVID money is, and that we have to ask for it. Is that true?
What money did you say?
Infrastructure, federal infrastructure?
The federal infrastructure program is not set up like ARPA, where there's direct allocations that go directly to municipalities. It's set up in where some of it goes to the states, and then the states sort of either create their own programs or balloon existing programs in order to meet needs. And then there's a whole bunch of other programs which are competitive. The model the state wanted to put in place was the towns would feed ideas up to the COGs. The COGs would look at them to look for regional impact, because regional projects would score higher under the federal model. Those would then go up to the state, and they would look at it. Then you'd have a blessing process, and it would work its way back down, and then you'd have formal applications go. It's not clear when that process is supposed to get going. I think there's a target for either end of this month, sometime next month. But it's something that I'm regularly asking about, because there's been a lot of activity gearing up around that, but not a lot of activity in the state to that end. So we wait for competitive rounds to start. They do require matches, so that's
What kind of match? 50%?
20%. So when you're looking at large-scale projects, if you don't have 20%, that becomes a challenge. So the state may have a role to play in buying down some of that match. The state's bridge program, they decided to amp that up, where they would pay for 100% of the project rather than their usual 50%. That means we give up a level of authority. We don't do the bidding, we don't do the designing, and that's fine. But that's a way to leverage those federal dollars. The way the DOT is managing it under the bridge program, we still have to somehow come up with the cash flow to have 100% of the cost ready to go. So whether that's a bonding question or we figure out some other approach, depending on the cost of the bridges, that's one area where we're looking at trying to pull in some of that infrastructure money. Early conversations were had with the DOT. 2 bridges that we have on our list are theoretically eligible. So that's one non-competitive way to get access to those dollars.
Is Rocky Ledge not an option because it's not regional?
Unless you're bundling together a bunch of other water extension projects. That might make more sense, which is why you would roll it up to the COG level. The theory would be once it rolls up to the state level, if other COGs have water extension projects, then it could be bundled at that level to say River COG and Capital Region and West COG all have water extension projects, so the state's going to call it a water extension project. But the idea was to coordinate and roll everything up. And we're waiting for that infrastructure to be put in motion.
Go ahead.
What is our next step for Pearson?
We're going to go on that right next.
Great.
Council.
Fantastic.
Anybody else? Okay, so we'll move on to number 8, council discussion. As far as Pearson goes, obviously we had the workshop, started that process going. I think it might be good if we actually did a site visit and maybe went over to Pearson, since nobody, I mean, last time people have been in that building has been a while, since it's been shut down for a while. And at least then we can put a set of eyes on the building so we can see kind of where it is and you know, because the discussions I think would benefit from the fact of us looking at the building and seeing where if we want this or we want that, where would it go, how much room is left. I think would be a good idea. It's up to everybody here whether or not they want to do that, but I feel that would be a good idea, and then we can continue to have the discussions and continue, I mean, again, probably workshops so that we can direct Carl and ask him for what we want. I think a site visit, then tie into kind of maybe, you know, a couple of different options that exist that we've already talked about. I think everybody knows kind of the options that are before us, and I think we would need more information on a lot of that as well. So I think maybe that'd be a good starting point if everybody's agreeable to that.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll work on getting a date set up for that, and then once we do that, we can circle back with I mean, maybe at the end of the month, then do a workshop, set up another workshop date so we can all continue these conversations. Because now, obviously, now that it's started,
Right.
you know, we want to continue to, you know, to go with it so that people know that we're working on it and there's something in the future, not imminent. Obviously, we have never had any discussions about what we want to do with the building. So I think this is a good starting point for us as we go forward.
So Chris, when you say another workshop, so we do a site visit, a workshop for us internally, and then
Some more questions.
public thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should, as a council, probably have some sort of, you know, direction. I mean, obviously not making a decision, but having some direction, and then, you know, getting the public involved and getting their input, because then at least that way, if there's things that we say, hey, we may like this or we may like that, what is that going to entail? What are the costs associated with it? You know, that's sort of, I think, the answers we need to have before we go into a public hearing, so that at least we're made aware of all of that information. Because I think a lot of that will play into it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's money related. You know, it's what the town, you know, fiscally can support, not only now, but in the future. Because again, this is one and done.
Yeah.
Once we make that decision, there's no turning back. So we have to make sure that, you know, we're looking at all the options and making sure we're making the best decision for the people of Clinton and for the town going forward, because that's ultimately what it's about. So,
So with a site visit, if we have a quorum, it's a public meeting, similar to when Inland Wetlands does their site visits, does that mean we're going to be noticing it and the public is able to?
Oh, God, no.
Well, the only-
but I mean, they can come, but I mean, it wouldn't be a public hearing. So I mean, it's, you know, I mean, again, we like doing all these things, and I mean, I think this council has been fully transparent as it relates to Pearson and about what we're doing. So I mean, you know, I think from the beginning we've said that the public needs to be engaged in this process and needs to be involved in it. I don't think we've ever said anything.
So are you saying yes? The
Well, I mean, if
public would be
it's a
included?
quorum and we're having a meeting, then I guess it's got to be noted, I guess, Carl?
If it's a quorum, then it's a public meeting.
So,
Oh, boy.
It's just a matter of policing to make sure we don't have people left behind in the building.
we're going to look at that rope where they'll hold on.
Carl, you explained to me that at site visits, we're not supposed to talk. So it's not as if we
This is
have
not a
conversation.
site visit
Okay,
like
that's
inland
different from the
wetlands.
inland wetland.
That's
Okay, okay.
a very different process.
Okay.
This is you seeing the site, so
Okay.
you have eyes on it, you understand what the building is. If your memory is not fresh of how it was when it was open as a school, or if you never had any need to go in that building, it's a way for you to get a feel for the space.
So this discussion would all be about the space?
I'll be walking through, getting a feel for the
Okay.
inside of the building.
Anybody have anything else to discuss? No? Good? All right, look at us, moving right along. Number 9, Town Council Committee Liaison Reports. Anybody have anything to report?
The Indian River Garden project has been tabled and will in the future be the Indian River buffer, vegetative buffer. News to follow.
Okay. Anybody else?
I am not a liaison by any means to the Clinton Senior Connection, but I'll tell you, I'm going to everything. And this girl, Christina Acapora, is doing such a bang-up job. She's got so many interesting projects and events and days, and she is just a blessing and just a ball of energy. And we are now, I know I have friends from other towns that are calling me saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? So I'm so grateful that she came along when she did and that she's doing everything she's doing because she's phenomenal. Not a
Yes.
liaison, just a senior.
Anybody else? Okay. And just so, I just want to clarify too, so like when we go to, council members go to these meetings and such as liaisons, we have to make sure that we're there as a liaison. So we don't really want to get into many in-depth conversations on any of these meetings because sometimes it gets a little skirted and people think we're talking on behalf of the council. And so I just want to make sure that we all are aware of that so that we're not talking in any of these meetings and then addressing somebody who may think that this is a council opinion or something. So you just have to be careful of that and making sure that if there is comments or questions or concerns that we have with any department, we do go through Carl. So we're not going directly to the department heads. Council members need to go through Carl with any department head conversations or commitments or comments. So I just want to make sure we continue to be aware of that as well. All right. Anything else? Motion to adjourn. So moved. Second? Comments, questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?